they met on the apps. It's just, I think it really is, at the end of the day, a matter of wanting to put in the effort and not constantly concerning yourself with what else can you find, because I think that's something that happens a lot in the dating scene, especially these days, that there's, you catch a fish, but you're constantly worried about what other fish you could have caught, and you're not trying to make it work sufficiently with that fish that you caught. I'm sorry about that terrible analogy.
Yeah, but I mean, you're right, because you want to, it's growing something. And to come back with my grandparents, like the I was going to say metaphor, but it's not a metaphor, it's the way it happened.
Yeah.
They got to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
What I was saying at the beginning, oh, we wrote letters and it's so romantic and it's nice, but we don't say enough. Like, they got to know each other. It did not happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
He courted her. I mean, so they got married 4 years after meeting. So I don't think that you can consider it was 4 years of courting each other, because by that time, you still, when they got married, it wasn't arranged. They knew they wanted to marry each other, but it took a while for them to get to know each other. And I say my grandparents, my parents as well. It was 35 years ago, and so he was an English person living in France on his own. And 35 years ago, there wasn't instant messaging, there wasn't texts and phones,
Yeah.
and so they also wrote to each other and kind of called each other on the landline. And so she had to give him a time to call her so that she could pick up while she was at her parents' house, because otherwise he couldn't really leave a message, because, they didn't have an answering machine. And so they got to know each other, and it took, and they got married. I think they kind of flirted for a few months and then dated for 4 years, and then they got married. But the thing is, I'm saying it again, they got to know each other and it took time. And the reason they got to know each other is because they didn't have this kind of huge sea of people to choose from. I think we talked about this once, of just, they talked and then they thought, okay, there are things I like about this person, and they worked on it. And 35 years later, they're married, got 3 children, and are, doing very well for themselves. But there are still things that they don't like about each other, and it's just, that's going to be life. They just deal with it, and that's fine. Whereas today, yeah, people just get over it and think they're going to be able to find somebody really quickly, and there is no perfect match. Oh,
Mm-mm.
speaking of perfect match, it's going to start again soon.
Ooh, yeah.
But there is no perfect match, and even myself and JT, we talk about how we feel we're each other's perfect match, but deep down we know we're not, and so we're working on it. And so just this morning we had not a tough conversation, but our opinions on something kind of diverged, and so we just had a bit of a tough talk about it. And so, how are we going to deal with it in our relationship? And that's that.
Yeah. You'd
Instead
be
of
hard
just
pressed.
going
Instead of.
in, instead of just saying, okay, well, I'm going to find somebody else. Because so basically the conversation was, taking care of your physical, like your body and things like that, so that it impacts your mental health, and like the virtuous cycle and things like that. And the way to go by it, we disagree on. um I could very easily find somebody else who agrees with me, but then
Mhm.
that person probably doesn't want kids, or probably wants to live somewhere else, or doesn't enjoy spending time with my family, or things like that. It's just,
Yeah.
the perfect 100% match just doesn't exist.
No. You'd be hard pressed to find someone that you can agree with 100% of the time on 100% of the
Yeah,
things. And there's always going to be something. We have spoken about this, and it's so crucial. And I hate the conversation about why someone's still single. But at the end of the day, I believe that one of the biggest reasons why people stay single for so long is, and goes for me, is because I was just being very picky, and I was constantly um what's the word I'm looking for? Well, I was
looking
constantly like, can't, sorry?
looking for something, or
No, the opposite of like, I was like, no, not for,
giving
like, I
up
was constantly, sorry?
giving up.
Yeah, I was like giving up on people very easily. I was like, no, pass isn't for me. And I was like, you know, I just like stupid things sometimes. Sometimes like, you know, the, it just, whew, wow, this is getting very hard right now to get this out of my brain. But um,
You were looking for reasons to just not continue with these people, and
yeah, exactly. And I don't know if I was looking for reasons not to. It's just like I always found the reasons not to. I wasn't actually looking for it because I really wanted to find someone, but I was like constantly on the lookout. Okay, what don't I like about this person?
yeah.
And why won't this work out? I was focusing too much on that and what other people I could find and how like it could be perfect with another person, or all of these things that really at the end of the day don't matter. Of course, there's certain core values that you should never compromise on. And you should always find a person that you click well with and that you guys problem solve together and have open communication, which is very crucial. But again, these a lot of these things are manageable, and you're able to develop them with time and improve with time, like nothing rarely ever works out seamlessly without any effort. And I've said this before and I'll say this again, is that my first date with my boyfriend, it was great, it was fun, we spoke for hours, but I didn't feel the sparks flying and fireworks and butterflies like I did on other dates with other people who turned out to be wrong for me. And we constantly look for that feeling of, someone who's going to blow us away, who's going to cause us to feel these tingling feelings that at the end of the day, all it does is make us lose touch of ourselves. I've had dates where I was so enamored by the person that I was acting like a silly, stupid nincompoop. And I was like losing sight of myself. And I was just, I don't know. I just, those moments where afterwards you're like, wait, what just happened? And you're like, the whole hour or two completely erases from your mind because you're too caught up in them and you're too infatuated. And I feel like that's just so unhealthy. And the right person should cause you to feel calm and relaxed, and like you could just be yourself, and just have conversation without all the noise. And we tend to overcomplicate things as humans, and we tend to just like blow things out of proportion, and we tend to seek the rushes and the stimulations and the peaks and the highs. And it's just, at the end of the day, it really is the small, simple things in life that bring us the biggest joy and happiness. And I think that's why a lot of people struggle to find their happiness, because they're looking for it in all the wrong places, with all the wrong people, they just think that they need to find the next big thing that will excite them. When in fact, the real amazing things are right under your nose, and they're usually just like the small, simple things in life where you're just enjoying a moment with your boyfriend on your balcony with a glass of wine. Just that's it. That's all you need. You don't need to go out every night and party. You don't need to go to all the fancy restaurants. You don't need to go on these thrilling adventures. I mean, sometimes, yes, every so often. We don't need to do it all the time, constantly.
Nice.
Sorry, I went into a spiel
No,
there.
no, you're right. And I was, reflecting on some of my first dates where, I mean, basically they fall into two categories apart from one exception. And the one category is when I got completely swept up in it, and I didn't even stop to think if it was actually me being swept up or if it was just some weird sensation of not wanting to be alone, or me not giving a chance at all on the other guy. And the exception is then, well, JT, where we had an amazing first date and it just went into something else that we've already spoken about each of our first dates with JT and Zev. And yeah, it's, and you want to find the happy middle, because like the ones where I got swept away I'm just thinking about them of, one of them was, he was saying all of the right things and we were having drinks, and this was during COVID time, so just after lockdown. So basically the restaurants were closed. So we had dinner at his place, which was stupid but beyond comprehension, but
Mm.
whatever. And you get swept up, but then at that time I'd been so alone for a long time because of lockdown, just craving human connection. And so anything kind of just passed for a great date. And then there was another great date where the guy just seemed so well traveled and worldly and everything, and I didn't even like him. Like, if I talk about him, he's such an asshole. Like, he is really just a douchebag. But the
Mm.
way he carried himself and talked about everything, like, it did something to my mind where I just lost it. And these things where I was, looking back on them, was like, I didn't even like these guys. Why did I get all
Mm-hmm.
swept up? And then the other side of that is that some of these dates where I just found so boring and so just uninteresting. And I'm, thinking back on them, was like, could I have given them a bit more of a chance? I mean, certainly. I'm glad I didn't, because today I'm, with the man that I love. But at the time, the stupidest things of just, one guy was the way he ate. One it the
Mm. Oh, that I can understand. That can be disgusting if they don't eat.
well,
Unless
I
it's
think,
just like he ate his food a bit separately or whatever.
uh, well, he was like, the manners he employed, like, it wasn't noise, but he was just
Mm.
kind of like very theatrical about it. But so
That's
what I
hilarious.
tell people, and this was a long time ago, but what I tell people is, you want to give, the first date is not the best first impression. Like,
Mm-mm.
you want to put your best foot forward, but it's a stressful time. It's a weird thing. You Most people these days, the first date comes from either an app or somebody setting you up. It's not, it's a rare occasion when friends kind of become involved and then get into a relationship, which is fine. But today you're going to go on a first date with somebody you haven't met. Like, for me, once I met somebody in a club and we exchanged numbers, and so then he asked me out on a date. And when we were in the club, it was 1 a.m. We'd had a drink, we were dancing and flirting, and it was great. But then 7 o'clock a few days later, broad daylight, no alcohol. It's just a weird
Mm-hmm.
thing. It is just weird, and you want to, you want to put your best foot forward, but you also want to be understanding that the other person is, feeling awkward, and you'll have to be feeling awkward. People who say that they feel completely fine and natural are just lying to themselves. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
natural thing going on a first date. It's just weird.
Yeah, and I think it's important also to think about the setting. Like, I don't think I've ever really thought too much about it because most of my first dates have been with alcohol. And one of the first dates, first and only dates with this guy that I'm thinking of now, where I had high expectations for him because he was witty. He was like the conversation with him just by text was like flowing, and he was like,
Mm,
ah, and mistake number one was inviting him over to my apartment, which I don't ever recommend, especially not
no.
on a first date, not a second, not a third. But that's besides the point. He had to work late in the end, and it's like so things quicker. And instead of just rescheduling for a different time, I was like, okay, fine, just come over, because I was just like really wanted to meet him. So that's what happens when
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
too desperate to go out with someone. Um, so he
Stupid
came over,
mistakes.
and yeah. So you're already drunk on that feeling of meeting someone new, and you're drunk off their charm. And I just drank way too much wine, so I was also drunk on that and saying stupid, silly things. And I think that kind of turned him off. And then things quickly escalated, and he tried taking me straight to bed. And I was like, no, this ain't happening. Um, and then he quickly turned cold afterwards, after that first date. And I think it's important to think about these settings for your dates, where first of all, you don't want to have it